Hey, Bookish friends. It's been a bit crazy around here. I got stung by yellow jackets on Friday, and my arm got all swelled up, and I had to go to MedStat and get meds, and my in-laws were visiting, and it's just been crazy. But I want to sneak in my July wrap-up and talk about the books I read in July, which was not as much as I had hoped, but there were some good ones in here. First one I finished was Towards Zero by Agatha Christie. The premise of this is there's a house party on, I think it's Gull's Point, which I think is supposed to be like at the sea, and there's this famous tennis player and his current wife and his ex-wife and other people, and they're not getting along, and somebody dies, and then somebody else dies, and this had Superintendent Battle in it, which he was in The Secret of Chimneys, and another one that I read recently. But he's not actually in it for very long. I quite enjoyed this one. I totally guessed the wrong murderer, and was a bit surprised by the actual person who did the murdering. I did finish a nonfiction, The Life-Giving Table, Nurturing Faith Through Feasting, One Meal at a Time by Sally Clarkson. This one, I think, was a bit more memoir-ish versus giving actual tips. So I thought The Life-Giving Home was a little bit more helpful than this one, but I still got some good things out of this one, and we'll probably end up rereading it at some point. I did read Flame Theory by CFE Black. I think this was the June book for the Indie Book Club that Chantel Reads All Day is doing, and it just took me a really long time to read it because I had it on Kindle, and it was quite long, and I'm already reading War and Peace on Kindle, and so swapping back and forth and making myself pick up my Kindle for more than one book multiple times slowed me down a bit until I basically had to assign myself, you need to read 50 pages a day to get it done, and then I ended up plowing through the rest of it in like 2 days. And it's the first book in a series, and it ended on a cliffhanger. Such a horrible cliffhanger, and oh my God, all this time I spent reading this book and you ended like this. So I probably will read the next book whenever it comes out, and it's dragon writing, but more at a college level, and it took me a little while to get to liking our character. She's a bit strong-willed and stubborn, and the whole premise is she's pretending to be nobility and that her dragon doesn't have its flame, and I pretend to not like books that have a major deception as a plot point, but I still managed to enjoy the book, and I think I gave it 4 stars. Trying to remember. Oh, I think Towards Zero I had chosen because I think I drew that one had been on Goodreads the longest. Actually, The Hedgehog Feast had been on Goodreads the longest, but it's actually a chapter book. This has images from Edith Holden, which, if you're familiar with The Country Diary of an Edwardian Lady, that's the author of this one. And I think her niece, or great niece, took her drawings and created this story after Edith Holden's death. So I read this to my kids, and it was quite fun. It makes a great kind of Thanksgiving fall feast kind of book. I also managed to read The Book of the Dung Cow. I drew this one for, The Picker Wheel. This was also my 2016 and 2026 list, and I read it for the Passport to Summer Reading Challenge. I still don't know what I think about this book. It was weird. It's definitely a fantasy, and we have animals as our main characters. And I was talking to my friend about it, and she's like, I liked how accurate a portrayal it is of chickens, but the turkeys were completely off base. Like, not anything like. I'm like, this guy must have really had a beef with turkeys because one of the turkeys was named after like a type of serving ware. It's not quite as bad as naming your turkeys Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter, but it's pretty up there. And the cockatrice and stuff was all just kind of weird, and I don't know if I'm going to continue the series. There's 2 more books in the series. I did read this for the Passport to Summer Reading Program. I decided to do it for wildlife because while it's mostly farm animals, there's no actual farmer, and later in the book, the woodland animals come and join the barnyard animals in battle. I also read Gone Away Lake by Elizabeth Enright. I actually got this book when my friend Shatona came, and I got to meet her, and we went shopping at a bookstore. She picked this out, or her daughter picked it out for me to read, and I finally read it, and I read this for the summer, the summer prompt or the country. I'll look at my journal here in a bit, but the whole premise of the story is that Portia and her brother go and visit their cousin Julian and aunt and uncle for the summer, and they discover this old town where it's a swamp, but it used to be like a very pretty kind of rich neighborhood on a lake, but something happened and the lake disappeared and it all turned to swamp, and it was very whimsical. And yeah, there's not much plot, but that's not the point. The point is it just felt like a nostalgic summer day from childhood, and I really loved it. I gave it 5 stars, and I'd like to read the second book. I did read The Last Wayfinder by Ellen McGinty. This one I read for the Sun prompt, and this was also the July Indie Book Club choice, so I'm caught up now. I really liked this author's Saints and Monsters book, and it is set in the same world, and it took me probably too long to figure out how these characters relate to the books from Saints and Monsters. And once I figured it out, I was so sad. I can't believe she took the happy ending from Saints and Monsters and did that to those characters. And it took me a while, probably because the main character, Kira, she's born in prison and is apparently kept as a prisoner. And the whole point is she's trying to escape with her sister and her mother. And I think just it has you basically rooting for somebody who's perceived as a criminal. And I think that bothered me. And then also when I figured out how these characters relate to the characters from the other book, it made me really sad. So this took it down for me quite a bit, which is sad because it's a beautiful book. And there was a map. So I also read this one for the Read Your Bookshelf Challenge for it has a map. And I think given how this one ended, there will probably be another one with the same characters. And I'm torn as to whether I want to read it or not. And I also have Crystal Witness, which I drew for science fiction. And I left this one. I think it took me a couple days to get into it, just simply because I was super busy. And then once I got stung, I was not feeling great. And so I basically just laid on the couch and read the whole rest of it in 1 or 2 days. And it's funny because I just said this one that I don't like rooting for the bad guy, but this one also has a main character who She is put into deep sleep for 20 years and then basically has parts of her memory wiped because her family was smugglers and she was caught on a smuggling run. And yet I was rooting for her. Maybe it's because the smugglers were trying to get around the like big government that was trying to take over the various worlds, because you live on different planets in this one. But I did actually quite enjoy this one. It's funny how different authors can take kind of a similar premise. You have a criminal who's wanting to criminal or perceived criminal who's trying to make their lives better, and one of them I'll root for and one of them I'll not. And I also reread Mama Bear Apologetics. I think I drew this one for nonfiction. Yes, I did. I need to take my cards out so I don't lose them. Like I said, this was a reread for me. I think I read this one 5 or 6 years ago, and I think I reread it too soon. The first few chapters has maybe a bit more anecdotal information from the authors, which I couldn't really relate to because, first of all, the general editor, Hilary Morgan Furr, she doesn't even have kids. And I'm not sure that any of the other authors, there's like 7 of them in here, I don't think any of them homeschool. And I'm not sending my kids off to school. And so anything that was kind of anecdotal or relating to the author's lives didn't feel relevant to me. But once I got to the chapters where they were actually giving just information about what all of the isms were that people face in the world, I thought that was better. Although I have to say that chapter on feminism, after reading Even Exile, I did not agree with that feminism chapter hardly at all. So that took it down a bit for me, but there is still some good information. It was a bit of a struggle to push myself to finish that one, but I finally did and maybe got more out of it. So now I can actually, let's see, I read The Lost Wayfinder for Hazard Map. And so for the Jurassic Reading Challenge, the prompt for July was a stubborn character, and I definitely chose Flame Fury for that one. Not much progress on series. Several of these were like first books in a series or something like that. I read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 books in July, which is probably interesting because we didn't have any school in July, and I read the least number of books in the whole year so far. I gave Gone Away Lake and Crystal Witness 5 stars, and that was it. And I still haven't decided which one was my favorite for the month. Sometimes it takes me a while. I did cross off The Life-Giving Table and The Book of the Dung Cow off of my 2026 list. So I only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I only have 7 books left, and 2 of them are on my August TBR. And not much on my bingo card. So for the Passport to Summer Reading Program, I actually finished it. I chose Towards Zero for the country prompt because they're kind of in the country by the seaside. Above the Circle of the Earth for Journey, which I read last month. The Life-Giving Table, Flowers. It had flowers on the cover on the table, and then flowers were mentioned in the first paragraph. For Home, I did The Heart of the Homestead last month. Water was Ladies of the Lake last month. Wildlife was The Book of the Dung Cow. Trees was The Burning Tree, which I read last month. 5 W's was The Witch Who Stormed the Palace, which I also read in June. books was The Air Affair, which I also read in June. Sun was Last Wayfinder. Summer was Gone Away Lake. And for Wings was Flame Theory. And I finished my TBR except for Pass Forward, which I actually ended up reading in July. So looking pretty good. I'm going to be starting up school soon. So I don't know how that's going to do for my reading month. Well, let me know what your favorite book was that you read in July, and if you've read any of these. And until next time, happy reading.